Tashidelek and welcome to Tibet This Week, where we bring you weekly news on Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration. Let's have a look at today's headlines. His Holiness the Dalai Lama grants audience to U.S. Special Coordinator for Tibetan Issues and Special Assistant to the President receives President Biden's greetings. Tibetans in North America and Switzerland offer His Holiness the Dalai Lama prayers for long life. Sikyong attends opening of Youth Symposium on Tibetan culture at Sara College. Tibetan Parliamentary Delegation conducts Tibet Advocacy in Australia and New Zealand. Nepal holds second Non-Sectarian Tibetan Buddhist Scholars Conference. Aargau Tibetan community expresses gratitude to the US for its enactment of Resolve Tibet Act. Representative Jigme Tsering accompanies monks from Loseling Monastery on Mystical Arts of Tibet tour in Brazil. On Wednesday this week, His Holiness the Dalai Lama granted special audience to U.S. Under-Secretary of State for Civilian Security, Democracy and Human Rights and Special Coordinator for Tibetan Issues, Azra Zia, who traveled to New York City, New York to meet His Holiness. During the audience, Under-Secretary Zia, on behalf of President Biden, conveyed his best wishes for His Holiness' good health and reaffirmed the U.S. commitment to advancing the human rights of Tibetans and supporting efforts to preserve their distinct historical, linguistic, cultural and religious heritage. Under-Secretary Zia welcomed His Holiness the Dalai Lama's lifelong dedication to promoting non-violence and compassion. The Under-Secretary also took the opportunity to discuss with His Holiness the Dalai Lama Tibetan cultural preservation, the United States' ongoing efforts to address human rights abuses inside Tibet, and support for resuming dialogue between PRC and His Holiness and his representatives. Under-Secretary Zia was joined by Special Assistant to the President and National Security Council, Senior Director for Democracy and Human Rights, Kelly Razog. On Thursday this week, the members of the Tibetan community of North America offered a prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama's long life at the UBS Arena in New York City before His Holiness departed for India via Zurich, where the Tibetan communities of the region will offer a long life prayer at the Hallen Studio on Sunday. His Holiness is expected to return to Dharamshala, India on 28 August. His Holiness the Dalai Lama departed for New York on Wednesday this week after completing a 6-week recovery period at the Napi farmhouse in Santa Cruz, New York, following successful knee replacement surgery. During his stay, His Holiness received exceptional care and worked intensively with his physiotherapists to ensure a smooth recovery. The Office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, His Holiness expressed his gratitude to his friends Sam and Carol Napi for their exceptional hospitality. The doctors have stated that His Holiness is expected to continue improving over the next 6 to 12 months. On Tuesday this week, Sikyong attended the inaugural of the 4-day Youth Symposium on Tibetan Culture at the College for Higher Tibetan Studies, Sara. As the symposium was supported by the Department of Religion and Culture under its ongoing Tibetan Digital Library Initiative, the incumbent governor of the department, Sikyong, in his keynote address, succinctly spoke about the initiative and implored participants to actively engage in the event to make it into fruition. A parliamentary delegation comprising parliamentarians Khenpo Jambel Tenzin, Tsering Doma, Chora Gyatso and Tenzi Pinzo Doring met with the Tibetan Chinese Friendship Group in Melbourne, visited the Great Stupa of Universal Compassion in Bendigo, and following that met with the Victorian Tibetan community over an intensive discussion on Tibetan issue with Tibet supporter and former Senator Janet Rice. The delegation attended an interactive panel discussion titled Why Tibet Matters was held at the Victoria Parliament House, joined by Honourable Mary Edwards, MP, Speaker of the Victorian Legislative Assembly. The delegation met with Dr. Zio Bedford, the Executive Officer of the Australia-Tibet Council, at the Tibet Information Office, followed by a meeting with Dr. Bryce Wakefield, the Executive Director of the Australian Institute of Intellectual Affairs, where the Tibetan delegates had an interactive session with him about the critical situation in Tibet. The Tibetan delegation also held a meeting with the members of the Australian All-Party Parliamentary Group for Tibet, who they presented a 12-point appeal letter and apprised of the current critical situation in Tibet. They also met with the representative Douglas Utine of the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Australia and David Muniz, Councillor, Political Officer, and Simon Birmingham, Leader of the Opposition in Australian Senate and Shadow Foreign Minister. The Office of Tibet in Nepal and its affiliate Himalayan Buddhist Library and Cultural Centre hosted the second Non-Sectarian Tibetan Buddhist Scholars Conference on 16th August in Nepal at the Kopun Nunnery. This conference was particularly hosted for the nuns from various non-sectarian nunneries across Nepal, which mainly centered around in-depth discussions followed by question and answer sessions on the Four Noble Truths. Venerable Sri Chusang Rinpoche was called upon as the chief guest of the conference, while Serbi Lobin Tulku Ngawan Chotup, the representative of His Holiness the Dalai Lama at the Office of Tibet in Nepal, was accorded as the special guest. The event also saw the presence of abbots representing different Tibetan Buddhist traditions and Tibetan representatives. 250 nuns from non-sectarian nunneries in Nepal and 70 girls from Tibetan schools in Nepal actively participated in the conference. The Tibetan community of Aargau, Switzerland, during its annual summer picnic Yarki, hosted a special event to express gratitude to the U.S. government for its approval of Resolve Tibet Act on 17 August. Representative Chile Chugi from the Tibet Bureau Geneva attended the celebration as its chief guest, where she highlighted the importance of local Tibetan community in bringing together its members. Representative Jigme Tsering of Office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama for Latin America is accompanying 5 monks from Loseling Monastery in South India on Mystical Arts of Tibet tour, as Tibet House Brazil is dedicated to preserving and promoting Tibet's unique spiritual and culture. The highlight of their visit was the creation of an Amitabha Buddha, Saint Mandela, a 3-day event that began on 16th August. The monks will continue with their travel to other parts of Brazil, including Sao Paulo City, Barigua, and Cabreúa, to promote Tibetan culture and foster a deeper connection between cultures. That is all the news for this week's edition of Tibet This Week. Thank you so much for watching.